Hey everybody, welcome back to Something to Complain About. This is A. I'm here with T. This is episode 18, T. How you feeling about that?
I'm feeling pretty good. Like we have recorded up to the age of majority.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
We feel kind of
Yeah.
like we've accomplished some shit.
Yeah. A
I
bit.
like it. That's
Yeah. Yeah, me
How's your week?
too. It's been really good. And I have to tell you something kind of amazing. We, just recorded just in the past 2 episodes, the corrupting candies. I went to breakfast with one of my nurse friends and I go to sit down and look at what she brought me. 4 packs of candy cigarettes.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. They look familiar. Actually, the only one that really looks okay, the two that look familiar to me are the Kings and the Lucky. The other two I don't think I've ever seen before.
The Roundup?
Yeah, those I don't recognize.
I mean, I honestly don't remember. I think the Lucky I remember, but I thought what I would do, because we were trying to remember how they tasted.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do,
You're gonna have one now?
I'm going to have one now.
I wish I could.
Well, I don't know, because you're the nutritionist here. So we've got dextrose,
Sugar.
cornstarch,
Filler.
corn syrup,
Sugar.
tapioca,
Filler.
beef gelatin,
Binder. I guess.
and artificial flavors.
Crap. Nice. That sounds fun.
Now, get this. Serving size is 1 box, and there's like...
They want you to smoke the whole box.
want you to smoke the
or
whole
eat
box.
the whole box.
And there's like, I don't know, probably about 10 in each one. So they want to get that chain smoking.
Yeah. They're not very big either, are they?
Huh?
They're not very big.
No, I mean, they're pretty tiny. It looks like a joint.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't look like an actual cigarette. They look more like a joint.
Yeah.
It's a pretty decent joint, though.
I mean, it's a well-wrapped joint.
This is true. Well, that's what happens when you add beef tallow or beef gelatin or where the hell that was. Yeah, that's just there. Make it nice and compact. You got all those fillers in there. It's basically just sugar tied together with fat.
What I really want to know is, did somebody actually like lick this one shut? Like, I don't
know.
I don't either. But
you're having way too much fun with that.
We are, and this is gonna have to be like a members only because I think we just
I think it's okay though, because nobody can see the video of what you're doing to the
that's
joint.
good. It's a candy cigarette. It's not a joint.
This is true. It's a candy cigarette. Although I do know that there are people who listen to us who wish you were smoking a joint while we were talking because they think it would be fun. And I'm not sure they're wrong, but that may not be where we're headed with this particular podcast. So
that's true. We'll save that for like Cheech and Chong podcast.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. You know Cheech and Chong?
Yes.
Oh, praise Lord.
I mean, sometimes miracles happen.
I'm eating this. And it tastes like how memory serves. It's kind of got like this powder, sugary taste. And it kind of makes me think of the little spoon things in the Fun Dip.
Oh, yeah. That's what it always reminded me of, too, was the Fun Dip.
Mm-hmm.
But I always thought that was there a little bit of a mint flavor to these? Because for some reason in my head, I keep thinking it's got a little, like, almost peppermint flavor, but...
Some of them might have. Like, you could have had the menthols.
The menthol candies, yes.
I mean, right now, I'm using the full flavor.
The full flavor.
Which I think is the Red Kings here. So let me try one of the roundups, because this one looks like it might be the filtered.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna try. They kind of taste almost vanilla-y to me a little bit.
That's interesting. Yeah, I could. I just don't remember. It's been so long since I've seen them.
I knew.
Much less ate them.
Well, you can watch me eat them.
I am. Does it taste different? This one? Or they all kind of taste the same?
Wait. This one does have a little bit more of a minty taste.
Okay.
Okay, so there is a little bit of difference. This one seems to have a little bit more of a minty taste.
Which is interesting because, like, that's not at all how cigarettes taste. But we grew up with these.
Mm-hmm.
They were candies. And I think we talked about this in that episode, so it's kind of funny to revisit it.
Weird.
Yeah,
we did.
I'm glad you found some.
Yeah, I know. They were a nice little surprise gift because I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So they still exist.
They do.
Really?
A lot of the old candies still exist. You just have to find, like, you have to order them special from special places because they're not obviously bulked out anywhere. But we have a couple stores here in the city that have, I hate to call them vintage candy, but that's what they call them. I'm like, hey, that's not nice. We're not vintage, are we? Never mind. Don't answer.
I mean,
we feel vintage.
How old are like clothes and cars before we consider them antique or vintage?
I don't know. That's a good question.
That's a good question. I want to say 20, 25 years.
That sounds about right.
Maybe 30 years for a car, but I think clothes become vintage at like 25.
Right. I don't think I have any clothes that are that old, but.
Oh, I do. Yeah. As a matter of fact, last time I saw little T, I was wearing something and she complimented me on it. I'm like, I think this is older than you are.
Yeah. And for real.
For real. I'm not even being facetious. So, but speaking of old and vintage, didn't we find a game for us to play?
We did. Twitter found a game for whatever the hell it's called. X, Twitter. I'm not on it anymore, but we did find this little game a while back on Twitter and decided we wanted to play it or at least do it for an episode.
Yeah.
It is, just for everybody who is, of course, Gen X, to recognize the name of this. This is Never Have I Ever. I think it's a Santa Claus version. It's the retro edition, I think they called it. Never Have I Ever retro edition. I call it Never Have I Ever Felt This Damn Old. But, oh well, here we are. It's got 20 different things on it, 20 different items on it. And you get a point for everything that you have not done. So as we go through it, if you haven't done it, you get to have a point for it, and then that kind of gives you an idea of just how retro you are, apparently. So
yeah, right.
We're gonna do these, and for those of you who are listening, keep score at home too. Like T and I are gonna take score of our own, and we'll see how much we want to cry when we're done, or maybe we just want to smoke the candy cigarettes. I don't know, but we definitely. I'm looking at this list now, and I'm not sure how this is gonna go, but for some of you, it might be just kind of interesting. So
let me ask you before we get started. Have you ever played Never Have I Ever?
Yes. Now, I don't remember the last time I played it, but I'm pretty sure it would have been like junior high school.
Cool.
What about you?
I think I played it last week.
Oh, there you go. I don't think I did. I mean, do you have stories from when you were young and played, like younger than we are now and played this, like when you were in middle school or high school? Like we grew up in very different places. I mean, rural, both of us, but still different states, right? So I don't know if there were different versions of this. I don't know if there were different ways people played it. I don't remember it super clearly, but I do know that we played it. And I'm just going to throw this out there. There were 16 people in my high school class, so I realized that that's not a very large number of people, but 12 of those 16 were girls. So we played a lot of games that girls like to play because there just weren't very many guys, and you were basically stuck in class with, what is that, 3/4 or something of your class is female. But the girls in our class played it a lot. And sometimes we would chime in depending on what we were doing, the 4 guys or whatever. So I don't recall how we played it. Like, I really don't remember it very well. I just remember doing it. But do you remember playing it? Apparently you played it last week, so you should. And let's be clear, like, you probably have better stories because you were cool and I probably wasn't in middle school and high school.
I wasn't cool. I actually remember playing Truth or Dare a lot more than Never Have I Ever. Like, I played Never Have I Ever as I got older, but Truth or Dare. And usually I just took the dare because it was less painful to flash somebody or wound somebody than it was to tell the truth.
There you go. That's fair.
There was a point in time where pretty much everybody had seen my butt.
Well,
yeah, you missed that phase.
I did. I mean, I did catch the phase with you dancing on tables, so at least I got that much, but I didn't catch the phase of the tiny showing, so here we are. But all right, are we ready to play Never Have I Ever Retro Edition?
All right, so let me play Never Have I Ever.
It's the Retro Edition, so if you are on X, if you look up Old Santa Claus, that'll probably find you the game if you want to see what he says. But like, you don't need to worry about it because we're going to tell you each of the 20 things anyway. So item number 1 on the game is, have you ever used a rotary phone?
Yes.
Me too. More times than I can count. So we do not get a point for this one. We're ready off to a bad start. So rotary phones. I'm assuming the people listening know what rotary phones are, but if you're of a certain age, you might have no idea what we're talking about. Google is your friend. Find out. You will be shocked if you've never seen one because you'll be like, what the hell is that? But that's how we called people back in the day.
That makes me think of, I was talking with an old dear friend of mine we grew up together, and her kids found an old rotary phone in somewhere, like in the attic or somewhere. And so they were like, Mom, what's this? And she, plugged it into the old phone jack, which of course doesn't work. And she was like, okay, it's a phone to make a phone call. She's like, those kids never did for you.
I mean, the phones that came after it were still push buttons, so you could kind of figure it out, right?
You could figure it out.
You could, but the rest of it, like, what is going on with the dialer?
Oh, but remember the sound they used to make?
Oh, I remember the sound.
Oh,
completely.
Yeah.
My grandmother had one on her wall, and it was in the center of the house, kind of. They put it as close to the center of the house as they could, and they got her this extra long cord so she could take this is before wireless phones were a thing. So people are like, what the hell is he talking about? Like, you had to have a cord, right? Yep. So she would take that phone and she'd make her call, right? She'd dial all the numbers on the rotary, and then she'd go sit on the couch because the cord was 20 feet long or 30 feet long or whatever the heck it was. And she could sit there and have her conversation for an hour or two and then go hang it up. Or she could take it into the bedroom and shut the door. So they made it kind of wireless, except she was obviously attached, right? So she had the rotary phone, very long cord. I don't remember my other grandparents having one for some reason, but I do remember my dad's parents had a rotary phone until I was in high school, well into high school. before they got one with the really big numbers because their vision was starting to go, so they could do that. But
my grandparents used to have one of those really fancy ones with the fancy handles. Kind of like, I keep thinking of like Dynasty. They were like rich people Rotary that they had in the bedroom, and that was their extension.
Like the Rotary was actually on the handpiece?
No, it was on the stand piece, but it was just a very elaborate hand piece.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just very, very fancy and yeah, just very fancy.
So we get no points for number 1.
No.
Number 2, never have I ever used a floppy disk. I'm like,
only all throughout undergrad. Yeah.
I still have floppy disks. I don't know what the hell I can do with them.
I do too. Yeah. Well, years ago, I bought one of those like converter things where you could convert your floppy disk to like a USB, I think. But now people don't even use USBs. So.
Yeah. And we're not talking the little floppy disks. We're talking the big floppy disks.
Oh, yeah.
Right. We've used both, obviously, but when I hear floppy disk, I don't think of the little cartridge-like looking one. I think of the one that's actually floppy and you can swing it around and make noise with it.
You could actually flop it.
Yeah, it sounds like you could put a stick on it. It'll sound like fly swatter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we didn't do a point for that one either.
Remember how we all thought we were moving on up from the big floppy ones to then we still called them floppies, but they were smaller and harder. Yeah.
Yeah. They had a case on them, like a harder plastic case, so they were easier to not wreck.
Yeah.
Can't make fly swatter.
Can't make fly swatters out of those.
Nope, sure can't. All right, so we have down the first 2 and we have no points. Lovely.
Okay, great.
Number 3, never have I ever used a typewriter.
That's how I learned to type. It wasn't even electric. It was the old one that you had to, you type to the end and you go, and then.
Yep. So we had.
Yep.
I've used both. I've used the manual and the electric.
Oh, yeah. I've used both. Yep. But I learned on a manual. Yeah.
Yeah. When we took typing in high school, it was typewriters. And then I think the following year we got computers and they were like Commodore 64 or some nonsense. They were really the first line of computers that went into schools probably. People are going to have to look those up because they have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm sure unless you were our age, you would not know what a Commodore 64 is. But we did definitely have computers at some point, but we learned on typewriters and then also had to learn on computers afterwards. So
I think we got computers my junior or senior year.
Sounds about right.
Because I remember doing I dropped out of choir or something and did like I did 2 typing classes. That's why I'm such a fabulous typist now. Like, no, seriously, like that's the best skill I've ever gained. And God
it was a good skill to have.
Well, and it's still
little did we know we'd always need it.
Right. And my mom, like I always fought against it. My mom was like, well, you need to know how to type. And so guess what's the one good skill that
we won't tell her.
I'm T. I can type 70 words per minute with 100% accuracy. And people are like, oh.
I don't think I can do that.
I can, but I'm awesome in that way.
This is true. You're awesome enough. All right. 3 down, no points. We're having a good time. Number 4, have you ever taken pictures with a film camera?
Duh.
Of course I have. Of course. Like, digital cameras weren't a thing until after undergrad. Do we even have digital cameras in undergrad?
I don't think we had digital cameras in undergrad.
No, so anything last century is film camera. So yes, no points here. All right, number 5. Have you ever listened to music on a CD?
Yes, and a record and an 8-track and a cassette tape.
Ditto.
And an iPod. Yeah.
No points for
Yes,
this one.
oh, man.
Well, the next one is actually, have you ever listened to music on a cassette tape?
Yes.
Obviously, we have. Because that's how this worked, right? We went 8-track, cassette, CD, MP3, whatever the hell we got now, right? And there's probably some stuff in between I can't remember. Okay, so no points so far. That was number 6. Number 7, you've already answered. Have you ever listened to a vinyl record? Yes, we both have, so we don't get any points for this one either. I kind of feel like the deck is stacked against us here.
It is. I still have a vinyl record player.
Well,
and it's vintage. It is my grandparents, and well, you've seen it. It's that huge one in that cabinet. Yeah. It's about 50, 55 years old now.
Yep. All right, number 8 and number 9 are both going to be no points for us. I can tell just by looking at them because we've already talked about them in the last 5 minutes. But have you ever listened to music on a Walkman?
Yes.
Me too. Of course. And whatever those little CD players were that were also kind of like Walkman. Because Walkman weren't Walkman both cassettes and CD players at some point, or were Walkman just CD players?
I remember calling them both Walkman. Because it was more it was like the idea that it was portable and you could take it with you. Yeah.
But you still had to have something plugged into the Walkman so you could put the headphones on. It wasn't something that you had. We didn't have Bluetooth or anything back then.
Yeah. No.
It was all wired.
It was all wired.
All right. Number 9, we're definitely not getting points. Have you listened to music on a boombox?
I still have my boombox.
I was just going to say, of course. Okay, this isn't fair.
Duh.
Number 10, have you ever watched a video from a VHS tape? Obviously, if you were a boomer,
yes,
or a Gen Xer, or a millennial, you probably know what a VHS tape is. If you are a younger millennial, you may not seen one of these. And if you are a Gen Zer, you probably have no idea what this is. So you should look it up. Because this is how we used to watch movies. It's just like a cassette tape, except for, video.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we had like entire libraries of VHS tapes when I was a kid. We talked about them on some of these episodes before, right? Like my aunt used to record videos for us, and we'd have this little library and stuff. So definitely VHS. I don't actually think we still have some VHS tapes. Not that we have any way to play them, but we do have a few that are left that, one day would be nice to. They probably are not usable. They're probably so old that they would fray.
I wonder because my wedding is on VHS, and sometime I need to have it redone digitally just to see if it can be.
Yeah. I mean, that used to be a big thing. You could take it in, a big business thing. People would do it. I don't know how often it happens anymore, but I'm sure it does happen. But now you have to take it to a place that can handle antiques because we're old.
Well, and then there's always the concern. Then there's always the concern with VHS tapes. If the tape rips, then you're done. It's trash.
Right. There's nothing you need to fix that.
Yeah, but it would be nice to see if I could have something done with it because it's like. It's our wedding ceremony and the dance afterwards. And
we used to do all that. We used to have those little handheld VHS recorders when we were. I remember my parents and my uncle went in on one together, and then they just shared it. And it was one of those big ones you held on your shoulder. And I mean, this was in the 90s, so they'd record our concerts and our first communion, or while we were told, whatever it was, right? Like. And they did that with all the weddings. They'd have somebody there to record the wedding and to record the dance and that kind of stuff. So I actually think we even have some funerals recorded because that's how they did it. And now you don't need anything that big because you can do it on your phone. But that was not the thing when we were a kid. So, all right, 10 questions and we got no points.
So we're already flunking. Keep going, Ben.
Number 11.
Digging this hole.
Never have I ever sent or received a fax.
Oh, jeez. Yes.
We still use faxes in the office, so I don't know. This seems a little weird, but
at most,
no
believe it
points
or
here.
not, as of a few years ago, the university I was working at, they still had a few fax machines on campus because I guess at that time yet they would still do like athletic scholarships and acceptances over fax. Yeah, isn't that weird?
That's weird.
And I remember somebody telling me the reason for it, why it's over fax versus email. But yeah, you get to some places that are like that medical office and you will still
have fax machines
somewhere. Yep.
Yeah. They're still really unreliable, but we do have them.
And not as secure. I know a lot of people are like, those are more secure than emails. No, they're not.
No. Not at all. Okay, number 12. Have you ever recorded music from a radio to a cassette tape? Yes.
Yes.
So much. I mean,
and always
the original, the mixed tapes were the original like playlist, right?
Well, they were. And I'm thinking like sitting and waiting for a song to come on the radio forever. And then always missing like the first 5 to 10 seconds because it'd be like, is this the song? Yeah, it is the song.
But also it would take a little bit for the recorder to even start working.
Yeah.
I mean, of course we did. Okay. Have you ever rented a video from a Blockbuster?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. We have. I don't think there's any Blockbusters left anywhere.
Last I knew there was one in Oregon, but I think they closed it. They may have closed it finally, but I think there was one left in some small town in Oregon. Yeah.
All right. I mean, that used to be the thing. You'd go rent it used to be you'd rent a VHS and you'd have to return it after so many days. Mm-hmm. And then at some point they started adding DVDs and Blu-rays or whatever. But as Netflix and those things became a thing, right? As the streaming services, there's probably way more than that. But Netflix was probably the initial one, right? Because they had DVDs initially. Blockbuster just slowly started to die because people didn't have to go anywhere. They could just order their videos to be delivered and then mail them back. So,
but wasn't the trip to the video store like the best part of any movie
experience? That age.
Yeah, going in and trying to decide what to watch and
which to take home. Yeah. Make sure you didn't return it back late so you wouldn't get a fine or something.
Oh, yes. And remember, be kind, rewind.
Yes, be kind, rewind on everything.
Yep.
Okay, so we have done that. Number 14 is, have you ever accessed the internet by dial-up?
Yes.
So my question on this is, do millennials and Gen Zers even know what that is?
Millennials will remember.
The older ones, probably for sure, yeah.
I would say anybody over 30 would definitely remember dial-up.
Rip.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I haven't had dial-up since early 2000s.
Well, bully for you, but...
Even when, has it been around? I thought it just been gone for a long time.
Yeah, but you also have to remember... it was expensive. There was a period of years where it was less expensive to keep the dial-up.
That's true.
It wasn't an overnight thing. It was it took a long time for it to transition. Although I do have to say, okay, I do remember in the year 2000, my aunt and uncle, when they were living outside of DC, they still had dial-up. Because I remember I got online to check something and my uncle went to call. And then he got that, who the hell's online? And that was in October of 2000. So, I mean, granted, yeah, that's been like 25 years, but it's probably.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I don't know.
It's just been a while. So we have
Yeah.
definitely used dial-up. In fact, that's how we were introduced to the internet, was dial-up. When the internet
Yeah.
became a thing you could get, it was dial-up.
Actually, when I was introduced to the internet, that was when you put the hamster on the wheel and then you started to spin it, and then the hamster would start running, and that would generate the motor to start the internet.
There you go. That sounds about right. A little bit like the man on the TVs. Okay, so we've accessed the internet by dial-up.
Quit judging my understanding of technology.
And
then I choose to believe that little people live in my TV and they fall asleep when I turn it off. And when I turn the TV on, they wake up and they perform for me.
They do. It's your own little kingdom.
It is.
They do what you say. All right, number 15. Have you ever used a phone book?
Yes.
Yes, and not just to sit on.
No, I remember actually, this is how long ago I started teaching. I remember teaching my students how to use a phone book.
I can't remember the last time I saw a phone book.
I think we had one delivered to us maybe 2 years ago, but it's all like yellow pages.
Yeah. Which, I mean, also is probably something Gen Zers don't. What's a white page versus a yellow page? That's a good Google thing.
Or a blue page.
We had blue pages. They were less likely, but I do remember when we would travel, and this is a weird story, but when we would travel as kids and we would be in like a hotel in a city we'd never been in.
To see if somebody had your last name?
We would open up the phone book and see if there's anybody with our last name, but not just
we
that.
Did too.
Sometimes we'd flip through the yellow pages because it would be the biggest phone book we'd ever seen, right? Where we grew up, the phone books were small because there weren't anybody else there, right? But you get to a big city and you'd have these massive phone books and you just be like, oh my God, right? Like that's a lot of people, a lot of businesses. So, and now you just look it up online, right? Like nobody's buying the phone book.
Well, and remember, like a lot of places, a lot of restaurants, or there would always be like a section of restaurants that had like their menus. And I remember always being so amazed at like the variety of restaurants and the food and just, all the stores and the businesses. And
it was not as easy to look stuff up as it is today. We had to flip books open and find things. So anyway, so we have used a phone book. We're down to 15 and we still don't have any points. Have we ever sent a postcard?
Yes.
I'm surprised this is even a thing. Like, is it just not normal these days anymore? Do people not send postcards?
I don't.
Like, I do still. If we travel, I'll pick up a postcard and send it to somebody, but maybe it's just us.
You never send me a postcard.
Yeah.
You never send me one.
I don't know the last time I actually sent one, to be honest with you, but that's what I used to do. Like when I was in Greece, I sent people postcards, or sometimes I would buy them and bring them back for people.
You have never sent me a postcard.
Oh, well, then maybe I made it up.
I think I have one card from you. Total.
I got you other gifts though, so I probably just was like, she doesn't need a postcard.
You got purchased.
You clothes.
You got me a skirt.
I did.
And then you gave me a card when I got my master's degree. And you bought me dinner when I got my doctorate. And those are all the gifts you've ever given me.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, postcards.
Yes. I've given you the gift of time, patience, my presence.
I've given you all those too. It's so nice that we could do that for each other.
You know, you ask about the postcards, and I did get a postcard just a couple weeks ago. It was a reminder from our vet's office, but to show how unreliable and unpredictable the U.S. mail is. They mailed the postcard. The postmark was 8 days before I actually took the dogs to the vet. and it arrived 8 days after. So it was on the way for 16 days.
Yeah. This does
And in
not
that
surprise me.
time, I had booked the appointment, taken the dogs in, and had forgotten about it. And we are 25 city blocks from our vet's office. And it took 16 days. Like, they could have rolled it up and tucked it in Mia's hoodie pocket and had her walk. And she would have made it in it would have only taken her like 3 days.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So
Postcards. Okay. Have you ever used a paper map to get somewhere?
yes,
That's how we grew up. Like, you had
that
to know
is
how to
how we
read a
grew up.
map. Like, we had maps in the car all the time. And if we went somewhere we'd never been, we stopped and we got a map.
Yes.
Like, that was the thing. So that's how you figured out. I remember being, gosh, we must have been late elementary, and we went to Missouri, if I remember right, to the Lake of the Ozarks with some other family members. Because, like, I think we talked about this in our vacations episode. Like, we always
Mhm.
vacations with other family members because it was easy to split stuff.
Mhm.
And we we got off the interstate in Kansas City, and none of us had ever been in Kansas City before. And so we actually stopped at a gas station and got a map, because the state road maps would usually have city maps also in them.
Mhm.
And so that's how we had to figure out how to get from the gas station back to the interstate to get out of Kansas City, because we had no idea where we were. But we had to be able to read the map so that we could tell my dad while he was driving where to
Mhm.
go. So this whole like Google Maps and stuff like that was clearly not a thing. You had to be able to read a paper map. And that's still, I think, a really good skill, because you never know when your internet's going to go down, or you're going to be somewhere where you don't have service, or your phone's going to get lost. And now you have to figure out how to get somewhere. I'm curious if Gen Z has
Or
any idea what a paper map even looks like, what
or
the
even
legend seems.
even just giving correct directions. And I know sometimes now, I still look things up on Google Maps because that's how I roll. And I think part of it is, and then I'll do left turn at 132nd, turn right at Turner, whatever.
Yeah.
And I put it on a post and slap it on my dashboard. One thing I like, and maybe this is just an artifact of using paper maps, but I don't like using or solely using GPS because it doesn't tell you the whole route as you're driving. It'll just be like the next thing that you do. And so it'll say, turn right at 100 feet. 100 feet, first of all, means nothing to me, even when I'm stationary. It means even less if I'm in a moving car. Like, T does not do physics. Hold on one second. I'll have to cut that. But can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So I know when I was traveling for a job interview, and I sat with like my notes on where to turn and da. My he enjoyed listening to the directions as they unfolded. But I think he probably appreciated it in a different way than I did because, he used to drive all 48 contiguous states.
Contiguous. Yep.
Contiguous state. So, but we still have his huge atlas
Mhm.
that he had when he drove over the road.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And it still is awesome. It's out of date. And then he also had, and it would talk about guidebooks and things, a really thick, it was like 600 pages of every exit on every interstate in the United States and what services were available at each exit. Yeah. So, and that was so nice to use, like when my mom and my sister and I traveled cross country in 2000.
Yeah.
Because then you could just go, oh, we can go another 10 miles because it looks like there's there's more services at the next exit. Whereas now, I just use my phone for that. What's coming up at exit 72?
Right.
Yeah.
I miss those. You used a big Rand McNally atlas, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
It was
Huge.
like this thing.
Yep. Laminated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had one of those in the car too. We had one of those in each car.
Oh my gosh. And everybody in my family, we had an atlas, but with his, what was nice was that he could take an erasable marker and map it. Yeah, because each map was laminated.
That was, okay, so that's not what we had. But
No. And actually, this cost he bought it like in 99. And at that time, he paid almost $100 for it.
which was still good. I mean, it was expensive in 99, but that was worth it.
I mean, there's no way to destroy it.
Yeah.
We still take it when we go somewhere. Yeah, like it's good forever. Yeah.
We had just the big one. The pages were thick, but it wasn't laminated. And then when I was old enough to have a car, so when I got my first car in high school, I probably was 16, I suppose. I bought my uncle's. Well, actually, it was my aunt's car. It was her old car. And that Christmas, the family deal was everybody was going to get me something for the car, right? So I got a snow shovel and I got jumper cable. I didn't get anything fun. I just got like winter survival gear. But also, Grandma got me one of those big atlases so that I would always have that in my car in case wherever I was going, right? So I don't know where that's at these days. I'm sure I still have it somewhere in a box because she gave it to me. But yeah, those paper maps are like, you should know how to read them. If you don't know how to read them, you shouldn't only be relying on, it's like relying on a calculator when you need to know how to do math, right? Like you should know how to do math.
I do remember, like even with the big atlas, and then of course, once you went into a city, like we had a Denver street map. So like your atlas would take you so far to Denver, but then you had to do the street map. But I remember in 2007, so my husband and I were still using, I think everybody was still using paper maps then. But that's how we almost ended up in the Holland Tunnel during rush hour. Yeah, because
not where you want to be.
We were driving from Philly. We stopped at Atlantic City and we were driving up the Jersey Turnpike. And I thought like maybe we'd be stopping one more time before we hit this city, or, we had more time or something. So I didn't have all of the more specific maps that we needed. And it was a hot mess. And all of us was like, Holland Tunnel, quarter of a mile. So I was like, oh my God, get on to the right hand, let me, before we end up in downtown Manhattan.
It's a bad idea. Not to be there, don't want to be there.
So that's one thing I don't miss, because sometimes you would use up to 3 or 4 different maps, depending on how specific you needed your information to be.
So you had to know what you were looking for and what you needed.
Yep. And I love it because I have friends who are from the East Coast and they've, or they've lived there. And they're like, oh, yeah, we know exactly where you saw the Holland tunnels. And yes, you did good because that was like the last exit.
So we do not get any points for this one either.
No, New York City just snuck up on me.
It has a way of doing that.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. Okay, number 18. Have you ever used a dictionary?
Yeah.
This is a question. I don't know. Okay, I guess I realized that we grew up with actually having dictionaries, and now you just go online and you find what you need. Or
Right.
it's built into your Google Doc or your Word, Microsoft Word document or whatever. But I still have dictionaries on my shelf.
I do too. I have a thesaurus as well.
Me too. Uh, Number 19 is, have you ever owned an encyclopedia?
Yes.
So I guess this is one we could parse a little. I've never owned an encyclopedia set personally, but we had them growing up, right? My parents had World Book Encyclopedia, got it because my mom was a
Oh,
teacher. So
okay.
she
Yeah,
got,
you make a good point. Because my mom got us, and at that time, I mean, it was probably 15, 20-year-old set. It was out of
yeah,
date. That's why it was so cheap. Um, yeah. So yeah, mom got it, grew up with one, but yeah. So I
I've
can see
never
where you
bought
parse.
one, but I
No.
think this should actually just say, have you ever used one? Right? Because now we wouldn't go to an encyclopedia like a book, a hardcover. We'd actually just go online and say, Ottoman Empire, I want to learn about this. And
You
you'd
do?
have an encyclopedia online that would give you information, but we owned an encyclopedia set, right? Like it was 26 books or something crazy. And if you had to write like a report as an elementary student, you'd pull out an
Mhm.
encyclopedia and you'd use the encyclopedias. So
Or if
definitely did the encyclopedia thing.
or if you were me, when I would finish my work early in school, I would just grab an encyclopedia, open it, and just start reading.
Yeah,
Yeah. Read it
perfect.
like a book. But I'm special that way.
Well, we know.
Yeah, I know.
19, we've gotten no points. The last one, we're not getting any points on either, I
Then
promise.
what's the point?
There's no point.
Get one
The
of the
last,
very
well,
special.
I think it's probably a better game for people who are younger than us because some of them maybe wouldn't have done some of these things, but this is just illustrating for us how freaking old we really are. The last question on here is, have you ever paid with a paper check?
Yes.
I mean, I paid with a paper check 2 days ago.
I
Like
was
I
gonna
wrote a
say
rent check 2 days ago.
I still sometimes pay with
Me
one.
too. Yep.
Maybe just a handful of times a year, but every so often somebody will say they want a paper check versus the form of payment.
I do it specifically for rent because it's just easier for a landlord person to process it, right? Like I used to
Mhm.
send him one, have the bank send him one like through the bill pay thing or whatever. And it just seemed to be confusing and I don't know why because our information was on it, but if I send him a check just from our checkbook, he's fine. I also do it for clinics and that kind of stuff. And I do it specifically because credit cards and debit cards incur a fee, right? Like
Oh,
every
yeah.
time you swipe your card, whoever is getting the money loses about maybe 3% of whatever it is. So in order to keep it
Yeah.
cheaper for them, if they want a check, I write a check because it's our checks are free with our checking account. So like there's no point in not. And if it saves them a little bit of money, that's fine. But generally, yeah, a lot of it's automated for most people. And I'm sure there are lots of people who don't write checks ever, but we still write checks at least once. I probably write two a month. Or if you're
Oh,
like us and you have a spouse who seems to like to get tickets once in a while from the little speed cameras around the city, I wrote two of those out last week. So,
well,
you
that's
know,
nice.
I know, but it's the easiest way to pay those. You can go online too, but I don't trust them with my credit card information, so I just write them a check. But yeah,
I think
so out of these 20 questions, neither of us had any of them where we get points, which means we have 0 points. We are last century babies, obviously, so we are clearly pretty old, and we grew up in the last century, so we're good. It was fun,
yeah,
even though we didn't get any points.
it's a
So
good thing this was not a drinking game.
maybe we should have made it one instead of a smoking candy cigarettes game or
That's
pretend.
what I should have done. I should have done smoke a candy cigarette.
Yes.
Oh, we're gonna have to do this over now.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so we got no points. Definitely feel old. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about this other than inviting our lovely viewers, listeners, to tell us how many points you got. So you were following along through the rest of this. Obviously, we took some detours and talked about them a little bit more. But if you go back and you listen to each question, did you make any points? Anybody listening make any points or get any points at all? Because like we clearly didn't. So if you did, you're probably a lot younger than we are. Because there's no way there's any boomers out there who would get any points off this. And I also think most older millennials would also not get any points off this game. You've got to either be a younger millennial or a Gen Zer, I'm thinking, to get any points. And the older you are, the fewer points you're going to get, which is clear because we got 0. Never felt so good to flunk something in my life, I guess.
So what you're saying is we need to find one where it's like 1940s technology.
Right. We should find the boomer version, the real antique version, instead of the, just was born last century version. Because clearly, oh well. It was fun. And sad at the same time.
Nothing quite like, yes, you are older than dirt.
They didn't ask us about 8-tracks, so at least there are people in our generation who didn't have 8-tracks. We'll talk about that another day probably, but we know what those are, but absolutely so. Anyway, anything else on this you want to share, T, before we go?
No, I think I'm just going to have another candy cigarette and call it a day. I think
that's great. Send me a box. So for everybody listening, definitely throw some thoughts into the comments. Tell us how many points you got. Anything in here that resonated with you specifically that's kind of funny. Tell us a story. We'd love to hear it. Be sure to like and subscribe. Share with your friends if you can. And as always, check back with us next week for something new to complain about.
Be good, everybody.
For today, I'm A, here with T, wishing you all a wonderful rest of your week.
Be good, everyone. I've already checked out. Smoking my latest candy cigarette.
Sounds good.
All right.
Whatever.
Bye.